Hello again. My name is Nathaniel Seymour, and yeah, as I've mentioned a bunch of times, I'm an animation mentor graduate back in 2009, and so what we are tackling today is going to be animating non-visual, non-dialogue communication. And what that basically is, I mean, as you'll find out, is just basically instead of saying something, communicating it with your gestures or the scenery, or sometimes both. It's one of the exciting things about it, makes it a lot more interesting. So, and actually here's my first way of communicating that I remember to put these on, putting them on. There's step one right there. So, yeah, like I said, anyone who's seen my tutorials before, they've seen this page. Most recent movie I've worked on is Alphas, which I do think comes out sometime this month. I'll actually have to check with the company I was with, and that's everything else. And a little fun fact, the one that I think the one project of everything on this list that I've enjoyed working on the most has been Pokemon Detective Pikachu, because I had the most artistic freedom, and as far as TV shows, the most enjoyable one I think was one episode of Silicon Valley involving a monkey with a robot arm, and I think that's all I'll give away, because if you've seen that scene, you know exactly what I'm referring to. So I figure everything else has been good, and what we are tackling here, and one thing I always include is overall timing. And something else we're doing with this is basic facial expressions, and if you're familiar with the Imp Rock character, you'll know what I mean, because his expressions are basic because he only has a mouth. He's basically a big mouth with arms and legs, no nose, no eyes, no ears, just, you know, whatever mood he's communicating is all represented right here. So that brings us to step one, which is our video reference right here. And here I am. And what this is following up from my last tutorial, which is tackling this little short that I did just for fun. And what he does is he's sniffing a really huge flower, and the verbal way of communicating what happens in this clip would be, I have a ridiculously huge flower right here. I love sniffing it. It makes me happy, but unfortunately I have allergies. So that's the verbal way of doing it, but of course what we're focusing on is the non-verbal way. And so here's my reference for that right here. Makes me happy because I just smelled it, so now I want to smell it again, and again, and again, until my allergies kick in and I violently sneeze backwards. You'll see that too. And so now we're going to get into Maya, where we can and yes, also something else, if you've seen my other tutorials, if I have multiple Mayas open, I seem to have this curse of selecting the wrong one for the wrong part of the tutorial, so let me just make it absolutely sure that I have the right one selected for this part. Let's see. So, okay, good. I have the right one. Good. We'll keep the momentum going. And yes, if I change it to this point of view, you can see what it looks like through the camera right here. And right at the beginning, what he's done is just sniff this flower for the first time. And if you, like I said, if you haven't seen the previous tutorial, what just happened was he's what I call downrooted this one tree because it was way too high for him to climb. So he decided to just yank it all the way down, and having the roots come up and having the ground break up and have some of the vegetation fall from the top of the tree. So what he's doing right now is just communicating. The first thing he's communicating is how that smelling that flower makes him, which is of course happy. So one thing that I've discovered through the course of changing expressions and everything is sometimes if you have a lot of expressions, like if you're doing lip sync, you might get in the habit of just adjusting and adjusting and adjusting until things look kind of awkward, you know, it looks all kind of distorted, and pretty soon the individual lip shapes just look kind of weird, just look kind of off. So a good way to avoid that I've found is to just zero everything out, and that's actually something I've taken the liberty of doing right here. So right now his mouth is just basically completely expressionless, just closed, but I think that's actually really good for the next expression which we're going to do, which is going to be a really huge smile, because once again, smelling that huge flower makes him happy. So that's what we're doing right now. So first thing I'm going to do is move this down just a bit. But of course, something else to watch out for are his giant teeth, which are right there at the top of his head. So, I'll do it right here. And also make sure those teeth are in the right spot. Let's see. Pretty much just a little bit open. So let's see. There we go. There we go. Yeah, pretty much looks like he's smiling already, but, you know, we want a really big, exaggerated smile, you know, because one of the beauty parts about working with a character like this, exaggeration is perfectly welcome. Oh, here we go. Okay. So then, that's where we take these right here and start making a little bit of the fine-tuning adjustments. All depending on what kind of smile we want, and of course in this case we just want it really big, very happy looking, and very, once again, exaggerated, which fits with the way this guy is designed, I think. Right? And something else you can do with this is adjust not only the angle of the corners, but how much they're puffing up by using these controls right here. So I think that adds a little bit more depth to the smile, I think. There we go. Looks that much happier. So, yeah, I mean, so then we have the smile established. And the next thing he's going to do is walk over and naturally start sniffing again, like I just did in my reference. And so, to do that, I'm going to give him a little bit more space here. And basically he's just going to come over this way, and usually what I do is I start with this, with his main control. So he's happy, and maybe have him sort of give a little bit of a beat right there. And then just takes a couple steps over here, so I'm going to see how that looks given this frame range right here that I just gave him. Because usually my style of animation is very, what people call layered. Because people might go pose to pose, but usually what I personally do is like start with one part of his body, and as soon as I'm happy with that, move on to the next one. As soon as I'm happy with that, move on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until eventually I've tackled everything. So in this case, starting right here at the main control. So if he was to smile and then move over, alright, that actually works out okay, I think. Because this is the very rough blocking, obviously. I mean, obviously teach their own. If pose by pose works better for you, that's totally cool. And if layered works for you, then that's totally cool too. So this foot stays planted until about, I'd say, this frame. So, set our key, make sure it's anchored down when it should be. And then, actually in this case with the feet I like to set every key just to be safe, because you never know what you might need or what you might have needed and don't even realize, you know. Like something might have needed to stay planted, or maybe his toe might have needed to stay planted, maybe the whole foot, maybe something else. You never know. And right here, like the toe tap, for example, I want that to go down just a little bit to blend him in to his position on the ground. So, this one, as soon as this one's planted, maybe even a couple frames after, that could be our last planted frame for this foot. Then maybe it takes a little bit longer for him to get over there. How long do we do with this? Maybe like that over here. because this one's stepping a little bit further, so I think I'll give him until right about here. See how that looks, if nothing else. That's also the beauty part about this type of animation. It can always be adjusted, because whatever you do first is not by any stretch of the imagination etched in stone. All open to adjusting. Something else we don't want to leave out also are the knees. So this knee right here, and you can either set a key there or you can just move it around a little bit. What I usually do is move it around, because you never want anything to be completely stiff, as I've mentioned in other tutorials of mine. And this guy's last planted frame, 1720, so do the same thing for this knee right here. And then when he's over, let's see, what frame does he go to? 1731. So that means his knee goes right along with him. And this knee does too. Now, that is. And so, yeah, so now he's over here in his sniffing position, pretty much. Like I said, very roughly blocked. So that we can continue on. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. And once again, here we go with the open Maya files. Let me just make sure and really double check that I'm selecting the right one, because I don't want to veer anybody off course. I've done that in the past, I admit it, but you know, we're all here to learn something, right? So, obviously, first one we just did, we're on right now, A. Next one we want B. So, B picks up right where we left off. And this is where he actually takes his polished steps over and starts sniffing. So here he goes. Sniffs a couple times. And then that is where the third part comes in, which is going to be him realizing he has allergies. And it does. Happens to all of us, regardless of how cartoony we might be, you know. So. But what he's doing, and actually something I forgot to do, was have him close his smile before stepping over. But of course, once again, extremely rough blocking, so, you know, don't have to do everything right the first time. And then he also moves over this flower so he can get a nice sort of sniffing range. And one thing I also covered in my last tutorial was how this flower right here was rigged up by me, so nowhere near as complicated a rig as any of the characters. It's all about as basic as it can get, just adding a bunch of bones and joints, and that's it. So notice how I've just enabled this and disabled the controllers for these so I don't get them mixed up. And then basically you just move it like you would anything else. And that's what I did to have him adjust the flower to the right position. Because usually, actually pretty much in this case always, what I would usually do is mix the two up again. There I go. He would move the flower over first, or actually I would move the flower first to have the flower sort of moving by itself. And actually I can actually use this since I use it in my video reference. Might as well continue that, be loyal to it, because this is what I use for the flower. So I would have the flower just sort of move by itself, and then since his hand, his position when it's in IK is a lot more adjustable than the flower, which is always in FK, I would do this first, since this is a lot more adjustable. But usually at some point or another, everything needs to be adjusted, but if nothing else, that's the right approach. Whatever's less adjustable, usually you want to animate that first. That's worked pretty well for me. All depends on the situation and the shot. So, he's doing his sniffing, and right about here is where he's like, uh-oh, I think I have to sneeze. So he backs up a little bit. I'll give him about that many frames to do so. And once again, just like last time, starting with the main key, excuse me, the main control. Rotates a little bit too. And also, one thing that probably helps is isolating this guy, just selecting his group, and then everything else is gone. So this way you can have a much better view of what his face is doing, even though there's a flower in front of it, but in this case it's not. So, first thing he does, And once again, I'm moving these around so that they have all the corners of the smile still anchored, because until he discovers he has allergies, obviously he's still smiling, still sniffing, still enjoying. But now, as he steps away, that's when he realizes, uh-oh, this is nothing to smile about. And then, yep, I had a feeling there's going to be other controls that have to be sort of anchored in their appropriate position while he's still smelling to show happiness instead of despair because he's about to sneeze. And just like I'm doing right now, I find the best way to do that is just to move him around a little bit. Alright. Just about there. So now, this is where he's sort of frowning and his jaw is open just a little bit. That's something else I'll have to keep in sniffing position right now. That and also his bottom lip. This, and also maybe the top one too. No reason to leave that one out. All right. Go. Okay. This is when he moves back, and we still keep him moving back a little bit as he starts to get ready to sneeze, and also rotating back a little bit more too. And notice how I'm just focusing on the bare essentials. I'm not worrying about the arms right now. I'm just working on what we're focusing on right now, which are the facial expressions, which with this guy are basically what's dictating the rest of his full body motion and everything. So you guys moving back a little bit. And that's when his jaw just starts sort of gaping a little bit. And as he moves his mouth down, obviously you want the rest of his body to interact with that as much as possible to make it more intense looking. Just like that. And also, let's see, his first frame before he does that, 1891. So yeah, 1891, want to make sure he has his sort of steady movement going. That's just one small example right here, but of course to get into the detailed version of it, we're going to fast forward again. And once again, I'm on a roll. I've selected A when I was supposed to select A, selected B when I was supposed to select B, so now that would only leave C right here. I'll even make this one full screen. So right as he's sniffing and then comes to his brutal reality, there you go. Look at the whole thing. Makes me happy. I'm going to sniff some more. And a little bit more until... Uh-oh. If you want to see the polished, finished version, I brought that into After Effects, add the background, and some smoke when he falls. I'll show you that right here. And here it is. And there it is. And also something else I did, that I also mentioned in my last tutorial was while he's sniffing, scaling down the mid part of the flower right there, just to show some interaction, because that's what my last one focused on, character interaction with their environments. And of course the big thing about that was him downrooting the tree. If you want to see what that actually looks like, you can check out my last tutorial if you'd like. You know, part 1, and now we're doing part 2. And also, I'm just very grateful that I was able to achieve that whole look of the flower when he sneezes, if you look at this right here. So he's about to, and then boom, there he goes. So here's what the flower ends up looking like, and I've actually seen flowers that are either dead or dehydrated or whatever. I'm just thankful that I was able to make it look like that with my extremely basic rigging that I was using. I'll show you a bit more in detail right here. So that made definitely for some good interaction and also visual communication as well. And that's pretty much what we were focusing on just for the whole lesson, you know, the communication and the facial expressions. And of course, whenever you have eyes and ears and nose and everything else and different features, maybe a beard or mustache or who knows, you know, the sky's the limit, you know. But right here, we're basically focusing mainly on the basics because all he has is a mouth, which I think makes it a lot more fun, you know. So lots of different ways to do it. And thank you definitely for watching, and I hope everyone enjoyed themselves and at least learned a few things. So I'll say goodbye for now, but I will see you next time. Happy animating.